Hey guys, it's Baileywiki. I'm really excited for this next town release. This is going to be pretty crazy. Uh, you're probably wondering like what's going on with these gates that are disappearing and reappearing. Um, there's multi-level token stuff going on. There's all new kinds of things introduced and kind of improved from the last system release. There's bushes and trees and things to decorate your world with. But there's a lot more than that. There's different types of you know walls and fences and things. There's improvements to the current system. Um, there's uh, there's camping. There's modular camping. You've got graves that have removable tops to them. Um, yeah, it's just there's a lot going on here. There's probably over 100 new deployments or new things that you can deploy here. Um, from making fortified forts to just making interesting tactical battle maps. So this release is mostly about tactical elements, and then the next one will be about a bunch of the new. The next release will be about a bunch of the new building types that are going to be available to you. But you can see here we've got a completely deployable campsite that is just drag and drop. And yes, there are tiny huts now, and you can actually walk into them, and they're a lot of fun. And yes, they're in blue and gray and white, depending on what your party's into. But that's it. I'm excited to show you. This is going to be a lot of timestamps, and then you can jump around to the elements that you want. If you are a Patreon and you have this, I'm also going to include a special map that shows you all of the new releases laid out on a single map. And then you've got, as usual, you've got a bunch of already built maps like the ones that I just walked through that you can use immediately or just use as inspiration for how you want to put these pieces together. So with that, I will show you the rest of the demo. Okay, so let's walk through the new stuff in the new Modular Town release. First of all, there is a new token type. I've had this same building token for larger elements, but for small elements, I'm using a dot token just because it takes up less space. And by the way, if you need to drag something onto the map, you can hold down Alt, and it'll automatically hide your control token as you drop it. So it's an easy way to hide tokens before you can get them onto the map. So let's look at, I'm going to timestamp everything in here so you can jump around to what you care about the most. First is with the large city walls. I've introduced some new elements. First of all, I've redesigned them so that the towers are no longer connected to the straight pieces. It's just in its more elemental form, so you have some more flexibility in terms of how you want to put things together. I've also introduced a short straight piece. So this is a long piece, this is a short piece. And then both of them have wall height enabled. So if you click on these, you can see that these walls are 22 feet tall, and this tower part is 24 feet tall, this middle part here. Likewise, the other wall types that I've introduced have height as well if you're using the wall height module. You don't have to use it, but if you do, if your players are floating above the wall height, they'll be able to see over it. So right now my player can't, and if I put him at 40, he can now see over those walls because their heights are set below 40. This piece here as well, I've introduced. When you lay the entire segment down, it will put a ladder down with it, and behind the ladder is essentially a doorway, which you can make this accessible. If you don't want the ladder, you can just delete it. It's just a PNG. So after you place the tile, you can just delete the ladder, and then you can change that wall to a solid wall if you don't want to make it that. So you change from door to none, for example. And you can do that with all of these segments. The goal is to make these walls all accessible tactically if you wanted them to be. The next piece is new and it's really cool. It's the gate for the city wall, and there's two types of gates. There's one with just a gate and one with the drawbridge. Embedded in this is a bunch of stuff. Like there's a multi-level token diagram that actually has a embedded macro that that one of my Patreons helped me develop. It's Path. It's really cool. So basically, you can walk up to this city gate, and you're on one side. You've got a guard on this side, and if a token occupies the space next to there, you hear a sound, and this gate now opens up. It does have multi-level token points here, here, and then over this mechanism. So the GM by default has to activate this teleport, and it will send your players through the gate to the other side. If your GM decides to, you can give your players access to these. You simply right-click them, and you, in the drop-down, you probably can't see this, but you give it access to a journal entry that your players have permission to interact with, and it will make them be able to not only see it, but interact with the gate controls. Otherwise, I think it's a fun mechanic to have your players try to fight their way up here and try to get to the gate controls themselves and activate this gate. What happens is that macro that's going on here, I'll show it to you, under a multi-level token, it activates this macro, open metal gates, and then it's looking for the PNG that has, or the WebP, excuse me, that has this, these gates here are a single WebP file, and it will either hide or display them depending on if you're moving in or out of that zone there. You can obviously turn it off just by deleting these. You can manually hide or show the gate. But I thought this would be fun to have your players be able to do this. And of course, as the GM, you have control over it if you decide when and how you decide to give them access. You'll notice there's sound effects even when I walk away. There's the opening of the gate, and then a thud for when the gate shuts. Likewise, I have another version. It's the same sound effects, same essentially pieces, but it's a drawbridge in case you'd like to do that over a mode of some kind. To keep going, I've introduced some new seating options, particularly for around the campfire, which you'll see here in a second. These are all under the bench category. And these are bridges or spans to be able to walk across areas. You can put these on tops of roofs, lots of different uses for them, but you can just pull them up by typing bridge, and you can drag any of them out onto the map and put them in places you want to, link them together, double them up. These aren't new, but the crates, I did get rid of the concrete underneath them, so now you can put them really in any environment. You can put them on grass, on snow, anything else, and I'll show you some examples of some new things that are coming out here in terms of terrain. Also, with the elevations, I introduced some tighter corners, so you can create elevations that are in tighter spots now. We've got different types of trees. These would be more for a city type of planter type of scenario. But you've got a large pine tree, small pine tree, both planted. You've got two different types of bushes, and they work like fences. You can see over them, you can't walk through them. They've got walls enabled, as you can see with all of these. I have lots of other fence types that I've introduced. You've got a log fence. You've got a short and a long fence type, and then you've got the gate. So between these two, you can pretty much accomplish anything you want. You've got concrete fences, again, a long version that you can just drag out from your compendium, and then you've got a short version, and you've got both a metal gate and a wooden gate. You also have these new palisades. These are fences that have supports, and you can see the smaller fence here. Again, everything has a wall height, so all of your smaller fences are 6 feet tall, whereas these larger palisades are 12 feet tall. They're great for building around forts, and you've seen them in some of the other, in the demo thing that I did for you. You also have spikes that you can set up for in really any configuration. You have a long and short spike. And then you also have wooden fences in the same varieties that you saw before, long, short, and then of course the fence itself. If I go down here, there's two things going on here. This is what I'm calling terrain spots. These are not part of your actor compendium. How you get to them is you go into modules, Baileywiki Premium Maps, Towns, Maps, then Town Square, and then ultimately you find them in terrains. And in terrains, you'll find these different types of terrains that you can replace your background terrain with, or you can use a spot, which just lets you put dirt or grass or cobble in very specific areas that you want to. And they come in squares and in circles just to give you enough flexibility to everything. So you'll notice I put a spot down, and then I put this new tile down, which is a sort of a hidden grassy grave. They come together. So this is one single unit, and you can move it around and you can pull it straight from your actor compendium. It's the grassy grave. But if you set it down, you can either delete this or move it out of the way. You can make it invisible, which would make it visible to your users all of a sudden if they were standing there. And then you can also, of course, use the roof's functionality. You right-click it and say send a roof. It becomes a roof. While it's disappeared for you, the GM, it would look like it's still in the place for the user, and they'd have to walk underneath or on top of this grave for it to be exposed. You've got that grave, and of course you've got this grave as well, which is the same type of thing, and it's delivered in a dual pack there. We have now added these fort walls. So instead of just city, we have town and fort. You can see it's a really good design. You can't see it in the GM view, but this is an arrow tower. And the arrow tower is set up in such a way that when you're in the arrow tower, you have perfect vantage point around you. When you're outside of the arrow tower, your line of sight is blocked and you cannot see who's in it. So it's a tactical tool that you can really move around anywhere. This arrow tower, I can move over to here. You can see the top becomes displayed. And this is just a regular tower top that you can put it on top of. But you can have your arrow towers sitting somewhere else, use them in different tactical scenarios. I have the same thing here where you can delete or remove these built-in ladders, and you can change the wall configurations around them. I have this this large fire that goes on top of these towers, and when the ambient light gets low enough, the fire will glow. It'll glow around it. Right now you're just seeing the animated fire effect of the fire itself. And you can put these other places too, not just on top of towers. Just like with the other towers, I do have the ability to rotate the top of the tower in order to make the connections work the way that you want. So, and then of course, what I've introduced now is there's a tower base under everything. So you put the base down, you put the specific tower that you want to put on top of it, whether it's straight or 45-degree angle, and that's essentially how you can mix and match your towers. You also have straight and long segments with this as well. And the same thing here. Notice that you do have to have a GM logged in order for these multi-level token hotspots to work. So if you're not logged in, it's not going to work. And then over here, you've got another just embellishment. You've got the ability to put a ladder inside of a tower here. If you'd like to say, for example, say there's an entrance on the base and you want to get straight up to the tower that way, you have that option. We have the gates for the town as well. And we've got the same ability here. More sort of fire effects. There is ambient sound. There is ambient sound with that you can activate or deactivate if you want to. We also have another type of arrow tower. It's a little bit higher class. This one's built for the town wall, which has more reinforcement. You can't see the top of it, but it's this shape. Let me see if I can drag it out here and show you. There's the shape of the roof for the town's arrow tower. Coming over to here, I had a Reddit request to make a deployable tiny hut. So if you're familiar with the spell, Landed's tiny hut, you can color it in different colors. It becomes opaque. Inside, it's transparent. You can see it picks up the cobble underneath it when you're standing inside of it. You, of course, can reconfigure this so that it's larger in case you want it to be larger, but technically speaking, this is the dimensions of a tiny hut. And they're all available in here. You just drag out the color that you want, or you can give your players permission to deploy these particular tokens, and then they can deploy their own tiny huts where they want to. There is some new lighting options, which I'll show you here. You can drag out torches. Here's a torch mounted on metal and a torch mounted on wood. You can have these just be standalone. You can also have them mounted on a wall. So this metal piece and this wood piece are the same pieces used in the fort in town walls, so that you can match them and put lighting wherever you want. You have a campfire, and then you have a brazier effect as well. Oh, by the way, there is light also within the hut. Once you're inside, you can't see from the outside, but the tiny huts are lit from within. I also have introduced this new system here. This is a trench system, and you can see that it's got walls already tied to these different pieces. And I'll just kind of move some pieces around so you can see how they work. I'll show you your walls again. So this piece doesn't have a wall here. It lets you walk down into the trench. These are one-way walls, so you can fall into the trench but not necessarily get out. You can reconfigure these after you place them, but it lets you essentially just build whatever kind of trench system that you want for different types of tactical purposes. And of course, you have the test map to see how I've deployed it. You can, here's just an example of how you can use some of those bridges as spans in a situation like this, where you've got this trench system. Of course, you guys have seen this before. If I was not in the GM view, you would see the canopies here. But here's just a campsite and these tents that have been introduced. They're really nice. They've got a light inside. When the tent is open, you can't see it now in the light, but the tent will actually shine light out through the tent hole here, which makes a really nice effect. And so that is the majority of the stuff. This is all just modular things. Everything you saw here, I dragged out of a compendium, and I made it on the fly. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. If you have any questions about any of the releases or any ideas or improvements for the system itself, let me know. But this was really meant to introduce a lot of new tactical things for you to essentially build your town with. Now what's next is building a lot more building types and other things that you can populate inside of your town. But you should have really most of what you need to build tactical maps on the fly. To set this up, first of all, you need to enable the module. I have a few different packs. I have two premium ones, Baileywiki Maps Premium and then Baileywiki Maps Towns. You get both of them as a Patreon. Towns is the one that you'll want to enable or update for this particular release. Go into your world. And we'll enable Baileywiki Maps Towns. Go ahead and say yes. Do premium while I'm here. They do work together. And when you're prompted, say yes, you would like to import the module compendiums to your world. It does not actually import, and say that twice, once for each of the modules. You may get errors. That's just a Foundry bug that causes that. It does not actually import anything into your worlds yet, as you can see. All it really does is actually import it into your modules list. And some of you may not get that request. If you're on DD5e or D&D 5e, you won't have to import anything necessarily. If you're on another game system, it imports these modules special so that you can use token attacher. It introduces all of these modules. You've got a couple of actor modules. Inside of the town module, you have all of the elements that I showed you. And you can search for them individually. just by typing in, or what I recommend is just right-clicking it and saying import all content. It'll put it into a special folder for you. And if I go over here, I'll now see everything in my folder. And I can create additional subfolders and organize these however I like. But it's really easy once you're in there. You can just search for things like fence, and it'll give you all of your fence options, for example. Go back over to my modules. There's also a journal entry to help you. These are all of the modules that I recommend that you use. Just to walk through these, FX Master does the weather, multi-level token handles things like those gates that you saw. Parallaxia, don't really use that whole much in towns yet. Roofs I use a lot. It's what creates the ability to make roofs and treetops automatically disappear. Token attacher, of course, is required if you want to use any of these deployable items. Token magic effects actually creates the drop shadows for a lot of these items. You don't have to use it, but I think it looks a lot more interesting and better when you have those realistic drop shadows on a lot of these assets. I don't use vehicles and mechanisms a lot in towns, although I do use it in my other one. And then wall height, of course, makes it so the walls disappear from your line of sight when you're above them. You also have some macros, and what I recommend is importing all of these. You'll end up using all of these in some capacity probably. When you import them, they all just go into your macro list, so they're easy to find later. You can come back here and look at them if you're looking for them later. But especially these open metal gates, open wood gates, and open drawbridge. This is what causes the gates to open and close and to make that sound that you heard fire when it's either opening or closing. So again, you can just import all of this content into your world. Whoops. This one. And it'll put it into your macros folder. Last but not least are the scenes themselves. I put all of the new releases on this scene. You right-click it and you say import entry. It'll create that scene for you. And then you can activate it. And that gives you just an idea of all the different elements placed together, so if you have any questions on how they work. And then, of course, you also have all of these other scenes. All the new ones I marked as new. In future compendiums, I'll always mark the new ones as new so that you can see what to check out that's new. But these will be really helpful for you if you want to see maybe a real-life example, or if maybe you don't want to go through any setup at all. You can just use these maps, and they will serve you really, really well. Some other things that you should know. Don't delete multiple actors at the same time. They may look like they all disappear, but you'll have artifacts the next time you load your map. So delete one control token at a time if you really need to delete a lot of stuff. And likewise, don't move multiple tokens all at once. You'll find that it'll get confused and you'll get artifacts that way as well. I did mention you want to update all of these. There are new metadata and other things with some of these elements. So I would just delete what you've got and load new ones. If you've already built maps, those maps should still work. Nothing should break those. But you'll want your actor compendium with the freshest data. So I would delete everything you have and then re-import. If you do get tiles that get in the way when you're dropping tiles in, and I've said this before, but remember these, even though I just drop a component in here, it's really still just made up of images. And you can right click those images and you can move them up or down. You can see how I move them up above that image. So if you ever find out that one tile is over another, it doesn't hurt anything just to grab it and move it up or down. And the last thing I'll tell you is with the gates, these macros are looking for this one image once, so you can't have the same gate, this fort gate, in more than once in your world and still have these macros work. There's a way to modify them, and I may try to conceive of a way to do that automatically later. But for now, if you want to have more than one gate, you just have to do without the fancy macro stuff that they're doing with the gates opening and closing and the sound. So that's it. Hopefully that helps you guys get ready for using this. And by all means, show up on my Discord. You can ask me questions anytime. It's a really good place to get a hold of me. And good luck and have fun making your maps.